Look, I need you to go to your refrigerator right now. Open it up. Pull out those bright yellow cheese slices you've been feeding your kids. Now flip the package over and read the label. Does it say cheese? No. It says pasteurized, prepared cheese product. And that word product, that single word, represents one of the greatest deceptions in the American food supply, because what you're holding in your hand is not cheese. It has never been cheese. It's an industrial formulation engineered in a laboratory to look like cheese, taste like cheese, and melt like cheese, while containing vegetable oils, emulsifiers, and chemical stabilizers that your great-grandmother would have never recognized as food. When I took office as your Secretary of Health and Human Services, I made a promise. I said we would make America healthy again. And that mission starts with exposing the truth about what's actually in your refrigerator. We are in the middle of the greatest chronic disease epidemic in human history. 74% of American adults are now overweight or obese. Childhood obesity has tripled since the 1970s. Type 2 diabetes, which used to be called adult onset diabetes, is now being diagnosed in 8-year-olds. And while there are many contributors to this crisis, one of the most insidious is the systematic replacement of real food with laboratory-engineered substitutes that our bodies cannot properly metabolize. Today, I'm going to walk you through 10 brands that are sitting in American refrigerators right now. Products that millions of families believe are cheese, but are actually industrial formulations that the FDA allows to be sold through a labeling loophole. And I'm going to explain exactly how this happened, why Europe banned many of these practices decades ago, and what you can do to protect your family, starting tonight. Let's start with the FDA loophole, because this is where the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies becomes crystal clear. The FDA has what are called standards of identity for cheese. These are legal definitions that determine what can and cannot be called cheese. Real cheese, natural cheese, is made from milk, rennet, bacterial cultures, and salt. That's it. No vegetable oils, no emulsifying salts, no modified food starch, just milk transformed through an ancient process that humans have been using for 10,000 years. But here's where it gets interesting. The FDA created a category called pasteurized processed cheese food. Under regulation 133.173, this product must contain a minimum of 51% real cheese by weight. That sounds reasonable until you realize that 49% of that product can be water, whey protein concentrate, milk protein concentrate, sodium phosphate, sodium citrate, and other emulsifying agents. But at least there's no vegetable oil in that category. It's still technically a dairy product. The real deception happens one step below that. When a product cannot meet even the 51% cheese threshold, or when manufacturers want to use vegetable oils instead of dairy fat, the FDA allows them to label it as a cheese product, not cheese. Not cheese food, cheese product. And in that category, the floodgates open. Manufacturers can replace dairy fat with canola oil, soybean oil, or other vegetable oils. They can add modified food starch, carrageenan, and a cocktail of stabilizers. And as long as they don't call it cheese, as long as they use that magic word product, the FDA says it's perfectly legal. Now, the industry will tell you this is transparent. They'll say the ingredients are right there on the label. And technically that's true, but let me ask you something. When you see a package with a giant slice of melted yellow cheese on the front, and the brand name has cheese in it, when it's sitting in the cheese aisle of your grocery store, do you really think the average American parent is flipping that package over and reading the fine print? Of course not. And the industry knows it. That's the loophole. That's the deception. They're betting on your trust and your busy schedule. Let me walk you through the offenders. Kraft Singles. This is the most iconic cheese product in America, and it is not cheese. Look at the label. It says pasteurized prepared cheese product. The ingredients include milk, whey, milk protein concentrate, modified food starch, calcium phosphate, sodium citrate, whey protein concentrate, sodium phosphate, sorbic acid as a preservative, annatto and paprika extract for color, and yes, canola oil. Now, the canola oil content is relatively small, less than 2%, but here's what concerns me. Canola oil is extracted using hexane, a petroleum-derived solvent. It's derived from rapeseed that is overwhelmingly genetically modified and sprayed with glyphosate. The WHO classifies glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen. So even in small amounts, you're introducing a bioaccumulative toxin into what parents think is a simple slice of cheese for their child's sandwich, Velveeta. This one markets itself as liquid gold, the ultimate melting cheese. It's labeled as a pasteurized prepared cheese product. And while it doesn't contain vegetable oils, it is loaded with sodium phosphate and sodium citrate emulsifying salts that allow the product to have that unnaturally smooth plastic-like texture. These phosphate additives have been linked in peer-reviewed studies to cardiovascular issues and kidney problems. In Europe, many of these phosphate-based emulsifiers are restricted in food applications. Here in America, Velveeta is marketed to children. Kraft American cheese. Different from Kraft singles, this is labeled as pasteurized processed cheese, which means it must meet the 51% real cheese threshold with no vegetable oils. But it still contains sodium phosphate, milk protein concentrate, and artificial coloring. The yellow-orange color that Americans associate with cheese is not natural. Real cheddar has a pale yellow color that comes from beta-carotene in grass-fed milk. That bright orange comes from annatto, or worse, petroleum-derived dyes in some products. We're conditioning children to think cheese should look like a traffic cone. Borden American singles, same story. Cheese product label contains vegetable oil, sodium citrate, sodium phosphate, and sorbic acid. The vegetable oil allows the company to reduce dairy costs while maintaining that melty texture consumers expect. This is a profit calculation, not a nutritional one. Great value American singles from Walmart. This store brand follows the exact same formulation as the national brands. Cheese product, vegetable oil, emulsifying salts, but it's priced lower, which means it ends up in the refrigerators of working class families who are trying to stretch their grocery budgets. We've created a system where the cheapest options are the most processed, and the communities with the least resources are consuming the most industrial food-like substances. Kroger, Deli, Deluxe, American cheese. Despite the Deli Deluxe name suggesting premium quality, this is still a processed cheese product. It contains milk protein concentrate, a highly processed ingredient that's often imported from countries with less stringent dairy standards, plus sodium phosphate and modified food starch. The word deluxe means nothing. It's marketing. Sargento, sliced cheese, some varieties. Now, Sargento generally produces natural cheese, and I want to be fair about that. However, their ultra-thin slices and some processed varieties contain additives like natamycin, an antifungal agent, and cellulose powder, which is essentially wood pulp used as an anti-caking agent. Wood pulp in your cheese. Europe has stricter limits on cellulose in food products. Here, it's standard practice. Laughing Cow cheese wedges. These are spreadable cheese products that contain vegetable oil, modified starch, and a proprietary blend of emulsifiers. The individual packaging and cartoon branding are specifically designed to appeal to children, yet what's inside is far from what you would make in your own kitchen. Cheese Whiz. Do I even need to go here? This is a cheese sauce product that contains canola oil, modified food starch, maltodextrin, milk protein concentrate, sodium phosphate, lactic acid, annatto and oleoresin paprika for color, and natural flavor, which, as we know, can mean almost anything because the FDA allows companies to hide dozens of chemical compounds under that single term. This product was designed in a laboratory to be shelf-stable for months. Real cheese molds, real cheese ages. Cheese Whiz just sits there, unchanged, like a piece of plastic. Easy Cheese, the aerosol spray. This might be the pinnacle of American food engineering. It's cheese that comes out of a can like whipped cream. It contains canola oil, sodium phosphate, calcium phosphate, lactic acid, sodium alginate, and apocarotenol for color. Apocarotenol is a synthetic color additive. This product exists because somewhere, some food scientist figured out how to make cheese sprayable. But the question we should be asking is not, can we make this? The question is, should we? Now let me tell you about the 90% problem. An estimated 90% of cheese produced in the United States uses genetically engineered rennet, an enzyme called chymosin that's produced by genetically modified microorganisms. Companies like Pfizer and DSM produce this fermentation-produced chymosin, and it's in almost everything. Traditional rennet comes from the stomach lining of calves. It's been used for millennia. The GMO version was introduced in the 1990s for cost efficiency. And here's the catch. The FDA does not require this to be labeled as GMO because the final product doesn't contain the genetically modified organism itself, only the enzyme it produced. This is another loophole. You have no way of knowing whether your cheese was made with traditional or GMO rennet unless the company voluntarily discloses it. Let me compare this to Europe. In the European Union, products like Parmigiano Reggiano, Gruyere, and Roquefort are protected by protected designation of origin laws. These cheeses must be made with traditional methods, traditional rennet and milk from specific regions. They cannot contain vegetable oils or industrial emulsifiers. When you buy Parmigiano Reggiano in Italy, you know exactly what you're getting because the entire production chain is regulated and transparent. In America, you can buy something called Parmesan that's actually cellulose-filled, domestically produced, and tastes nothing like the real thing. We've allowed our food supply to become a mockery of tradition. So what should you buy instead? Let me give you the clean alternatives. Tillamook. This is a farmer-owned cooperative based in Oregon, and they produce natural cheese with simple ingredients. Look for their block cheddar, not the processed slices, and you'll find milk, cheese culture, salt, enzymes, and annatto for color. That's it. No vegetable oils, no phosphate emulsifiers. This is real cheese. Organic Valley. This company produces organic cheese from pasture-raised cows. Their products are certified USDA organic, which means no synthetic pesticides, no GMO feed, and no artificial hormones. This is what cheese should be. Kerrygold. This Irish brand uses milk from grass-fed cows, and their cheese has a nutritional profile that's dramatically different from grain-fed dairy. Higher omega-3 fatty acids, higher conjugated linoleic acid, higher fat-soluble vitamins. This is the European standard that we should be demanding in America. Cabot. Another cooperative-owned brand, Cabot produces award-winning cheddars with minimal ingredients. They're transparent about their farming practices and have committed to sustainable agriculture. Local artisan cheese from farmers markets. This is always my top recommendation. When you buy from a local cheesemaker, you can ask them directly about their practices. You can visit their farms. You can see the animals. This is how food was meant to be produced and purchased through relationships and trust, not through industrial supply chains and deceptive labeling. Look, I understand that not everyone can afford artisan cheese. I understand that when you're working 2 jobs and raising kids, you grab what's convenient, and that's exactly why this system is so perverse. The industrial food complex has made real food expensive and processed food cheap by externalizing the health costs onto the American public. We pay less at the checkout, and we pay more at the hospital. We pay more in chronic disease. We pay more in lost productivity and shortened lifespans. The true cost of that $1.99 pack of cheese slices is not on the price tag, it's in the epidemic of metabolic dysfunction destroying American families. We are changing the regulations. My department is reviewing the standards of identity for dairy products. We are pushing for transparent labeling that clearly distinguishes real cheese from cheese products. We are examining the use of emulsifying salts, artificial colors, and GMO-derived enzymes. But regulatory change takes time, and the food industry has an army of lobbyists fighting every reform. That's why I need you to vote with your wallet today. Every time you choose real cheese over processed product, you send a message. Every time you read the label and put back the package with vegetable oil and sodium phosphate, you are part of this movement. We are not powerless. We never were. The power is in your grocery cart. Read the ingredients. If it says cheese product, put it back. If it contains canola oil, soybean oil, or modified food starch, put it back. If it has a list of ingredients longer than 5 items, be suspicious. Real cheese is simple. Real food is simple. We've just been conditioned to accept complexity as normal. Join me in this fight. Make America healthy again starts in your kitchen, in your refrigerator, and the choices you make 3 times a day. Together, we will expose the corporate capture of our food system. Together, We will demand the same standards that Europe has maintained for decades. Together, we will reclaim real food for American families, and we will win